Well, the idea has been a long time coming. It's coming from a variety of different experiences. One story was I read a book called Blessed Unrest by a guy named Paul Hawken, and he talks about all of the different organizations and people in the world who are doing good that he uncovered as he in his travels and speaking and so forth. And I read that book and was very moved by it, and then one time had a birthday party where I invited all my friends over to do a charity fundraising for everybody's own special charity. And that's kind of where the idea sort of sparked from, is that there's all these people out in the world who have stories and are doing good things. Paul Hawken calls it sort of the immune system for all of the bad things in the world that are happening. There's all these good people out there, like blood cells fighting all the good stuff, to create the good stuff. But then we also, had our own experiences where just everyday people inspired us. When we were having a bad day, we'd see somebody who, frankly had a much more difficult experience and were approaching it with much more grace than we were even our day. So that
and that changed and moved us and changed our day, and then we went about our day differently. And so these are the stories we want to share.
So we said, what if there was a way to start putting all of these stories in one place where somebody could go and watch for a couple minutes a day, even just to be inspired instead of watching a half an hour of awful news stories. This could at least give some inspiration, some good, and some happiness in the world. And the stories aren't always going to be happy either, but there's usually some grace or other inspiration or other meaning behind everything. So
life's hard, and sometimes things happen, and we truly believe they're for our soul to learn and evolve and grow from. But life's tricky, and I think maneuvering the way you maneuver through your life with these Earth School lessons and what you learn from that's the grace and beauty that you show to other people. And I think in turn, when other people recognize that, it helps them in their own life and helps them to deal with their challenges that they're working through at that time.
We watched Shelley at the Delray Beach Children's Garden, take a vision. We didn't even know her too well at the time, but watched her take her dream and make it a reality by bringing a bunch of people together. And we actually didn't even know her story until we went and asked her. We just knew that something awesome had happened and that she made it happen, and we wanted to know more. And we were inspired going to the place, experiencing it, and once we heard the story, we were like, this is amazing. People can make great things happen just next door to you. You don't even know sometimes.
And a lot of times people who've done something so extraordinary like that, since they've been through it from the beginning, they almost don't even think of it as extraordinary as it actually is. And so we find it interesting that when we show interest in someone's story, that, oh my gosh, well, to them it's pretty average and, not terribly exciting, but to somebody else it's like, oh my gosh, how did you have the drive to keep going with this? It took you years to do this. And, to that person, it was just day after day, year after year, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. We see the end product and say it's amazing. To that person, sometimes it's, they see the challenge that went into it. And in Janelle's story, I met Janelle and Preston. We went to the same physical therapist. My son goes to the same physical therapist as Janelle does. And so many times I was sitting in that waiting room just maybe not having the best day ever. And then I see Janelle and Preston walk in, and it changed my day to see smiles on their faces and see the challenges they have day to day as nothing. Our challenges pale in comparison to that, and it would just, make me get up, stand a little straighter, and just keep on trucking, and really change my whole day, and just get me out of my own little pity party and funk and get me back to what's really important in life. And when we shared with Preston that what an impact he and Janelle had, when I shared with Preston and Janelle what an impact they had on my life and how I think about them often and how I draw upon the strength that they have and the I don't know how to describe the force that keeps them going. And when I told them that and shared that, they had no idea. They said, "What? We were a sort of inspiration for you?" Like they had no idea that just coming in and smiling at somebody in the waiting room and cracking a joke and just could change someone else's day. And I think that's one of the gems that Stories Lived is going to have. It's not only for the people making the video about someone or something else. What is the gem is going to be also for that person making it, and to do as almost a gift to somebody else, but also for that person who finally realizes, oh wow, gosh, it is pretty extraordinary what I've done, or the experiences I've been through. They're not so ordinary, and wow, I could share these and be a light to someone else. That's amazing.
We had a personal experience with that where I wrote an essay about Courtney's experience with breastfeeding when our son was in the hospital and going through some things, and it was inspiring to me, and I shared it. I ended up sharing it on a few social media sites, and within 24 hours was bombarded with hits on my website, and pretty soon we started reading the comments to the story on other websites, and it was just one after another of like, I needed to hear this today. I needed to this kept me going through today. So we kind of saw firsthand from the other side what, wow, just like our little, the story, wasn't much. I mean, we didn't do anything crazy. We didn't save the world. We just, she just got up at 3 a.m, every 3 hours for days on end, months on end to breastfeed. Years, yeah. And yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. But it was, like I said, it was a difficult experience, but nothing like earth-shattering. And yet at the same time, it proved to be a motivator and an inspiration, and a sense of camaraderie with a lot of other people who were going through similar things. And I don't think we realized it was going to have that impact. So that kind of played into our. I really see it as a kind of reference to before, sort of a video a day, a quick little, your espresso, of good and hope and, inspiration in the world, where you can go and watch a video for 2.5 minutes, and, maybe you only watch one that day, and then it gives you something exciting. Some people might change their lives that day. Other people, it just gives them a way to approach the day a little bit more positively. But yes, to be a central spot where all of this is, all these stories can come into one place, and can be an archive. So year after year, people are putting their stories in here, and can be building and all that.
It's to catalog the beauty, like the underlying beauty. We all know the story of someone who did this, or there was some natural disaster and everyone came together. We always hear like the big stories, but we hope Stories Lived is gonna bring to light the little stories. It might be your neighbor who just takes in the neighbor kid, after school and does it for free for the working single mom. It might be just, a lot of us do things that we don't even realize, but they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful, and it's just making that beauty shown to others, and hopefully intrinsically motivating us all to go about our lives to be better, more beautiful people. No, it did. So please think of a story, think of somebody or a story who's moved and inspired you, and tell us your story. Tell us their story, or tell us your own story, and submit these to storieslived.com. as soon as possible.
So please join us and help us make our vision a reality, and submit your video at storieslift.com.